Well, good afternoon. So today I'm going to be wrapping up the teaching on Gideon's 300 men. And I'm going to combine the last two characteristics of Gideon's men, which are men that were victory-minded and men that were not faint-hearted. So I looked up the definition of faint-hearted, and it says this: someone who's faint-hearted is fearful. If you're generally faint-hearted, you tend to be a little timid or anxious, easily scared or overwhelmed. Now, if you remember in the story of Gideon, God sent all those that were fearful home, and 10,000 of them went home out of 32,000. So Gideon's men could not afford to be surrounded by fearful men, because fear spreads. Again, the dictionary said, if you're faint-hearted, you tend to be a little timid. And in 2 Timothy 1:7 in the NIV translation, it says this: for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. So in other words, we do not have to be led by our emotions. We don't have to let them control us. But God has given us the power to be in control of our emotions. So what do we do when we feel like we're losing control? First of all, don't let negative words slip out of your mouth. I was at a Pentecostal prayer meeting when I first moved to Minnesota 7 years ago. And the Spirit of the Lord was very, very precious. And I was going through a difficult time at work, and the Lord spoke to my heart and said, don't let negative words slip out of your mouth, but rather focus on what is right. Chances are you already know what's wrong. So as I was studying this last study on Gideon's men, I was just meditating on being victory-minded. And I came across the story of Deborah and Barak in Judges chapter 4. Now, I'm just going to condense this in just a few minutes, but I want to encourage you to read Judges chapter 4 and look at all the details in that story. And plus, you can pronounce all the names that I'm not going to try to pronounce. So the story begins with Israel doing evil in the sight of the Lord again. And so the Lord turned them over to King Jabin, a Canaanite king. And the commander of his army was Sisera. And Sisera, who had 900 iron chariots, ruthlessly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. And then the people cried out for help. Let me just say, if you've been praying for somebody for over 20 years, don't give up. Because sometimes it takes a little longer for some of us to cry out for help. But if you're praying, God is working. Don't ever give up. And but Deborah was a prophet, and she was judging Israel at the time. And one day she sent for Barak, and she had a word from the Lord for him. She said this: this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you. Call out 10,000 warriors from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun at Mount Tabor. There, spit it out. And then I will call out Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, along with his chariots and warriors, to the Kishon River, and there I will give you victory over him. Now, that just jumped out at me. There, that word there. I will give you victory over him there. And he was only going to experience victory if he obeyed and if he took action. And we know the story. He said, okay, I'll go, Deborah, if you go, but not if you don't go with me. So you have to go with me. So she goes with him. And then she prophesies again to Barak and says, get ready, for this is the day the Lord will give you victory over Sisera, for the Lord is marching ahead of you. And when Barak heard this, he led the 10,000 warriors down the slopes of Mount Tabor into battle. And when Barak attacked, the Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots and warriors into a panic. And the story goes on, of course, they win against all odds. And what's really cool is this. As I was studying this stuff, I looked up the definition of what being victory-minded was, and it said this: achievement or mastery or success in a struggle or endeavor against odds or difficulties. Now, I'm going to read you something from the Enduring Word Commentary in Judges chapter 4. Barak and all who went with him showed real courage and trust in God to go out against Sisera and his army. They had essentially no weapons to fight with against a technology-advanced army having 900 chariots of iron. In addition, God led them to fight on a plain which gave great advantage to the forces with the chariots. This was sophisticated and impressive military technology. The armies of Israel, under the direction of Barak and Deborah, were at a great disadvantage. But because of Barak's great trust in God, as well as the trust his armies had in the Lord, God granted them a great victory against odds. Okay. So let me just end this study by saying this. If we are ever going to do great things for God, we're going to have to step out against all odds at times. And don't overthink it. Just step out and do what God has asked you to do. And we need to just keep our minds full of the Word, not leaving any room for doubt, and just trust God. So let me just ask you, what is God asking you to do in 2022? That thing that you're thinking about, that's probably God. So I encourage you to step out in faith and just do it. The only way we're going to be victory-minded is to stay in the Word, basing what we believe on the Word, and then we will still be standing up when it's all over. And next week, I'm going to be starting a new series with a new year. And so far, I believe the Lord's leading me to teach on love because we're living in a very, very dark world, and the world needs love. And as I'm learning, I'll pass it on to you, and hopefully we'll make a better mark on this world with the love of Jesus. And I'll see you next week, Lord willing. Bye-bye.